So I've handed out the sheet with the basic scripture that we're going to use today. Now you might know that unusually it's a whole long passage. I don't usually do that. I tend to prefer to use a short passage because it's easier for you to concentrate as we go through a short passage. But this is a special passage. It's taken from John chapter 10. And a lot of it you'll be familiar with, but I'm sure the Lord's going to present it in a fresh way this morning. When I was preparing this, I saw this as a glass of cool water. And I want you to think of your sheet of paper that way. We've had some very hot weather over the last 6 weeks, so I know how much you've come to appreciate a good glass of clear water or whatever refreshing drink that you have. And these words of Jesus, which is we're going to look at, they are the words of Jesus from the Gospel of St. John, are refreshing water for our souls. And they are delicious waters, as we're going to discover. So let's take time over them. Let's drink them in. It's a special thing to be a Christian. I put that as the title to this message today. It's a special thing to be a Christian. And I want us to be very aware of that this morning. And in order to appreciate how special it is, we need to know 3 things. We need to know what Jesus Christ has done for us. We need to know what position we find ourselves in now because of what Jesus has done for us. And we also need to know what response we should make to what Jesus has done for us and what position we are in. Now that's a lot to take in, but it's the message that we find Jesus ministering in John chapter 10. Now as we read his words, that's what we're going to discover, because that was what he was revealing to those who heard him minister this word. He revealed to them what he was going to accomplish for them, what position they were going to be in as a result, and what they were going to need to do about it. So let's start. We'll start from verse 1, right from the beginning of John chapter 10. And Jesus says, "Most assuredly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and leads them out. When he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." Jesus used this illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke to them. Let's pause a minute there. Jesus used this illustration. Why did he use this illustration? If you think about it, for us now in our times, it's quite difficult to grasp this illustration because we don't belong to an agricultural society. We're not used to shepherds and sheep. Maybe we see it on Country File on a Sunday evening on the television, but that's about as close as most of us get to it. Not only that, even through Country File, our knowledge of sheep and shepherds is very different from how it was 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. But let me assure you that the people hearing this message, this illustration from Jesus, knew exactly what he was talking about the moment that he started speaking. Now, we have to take a moment just to put ourselves back with them, sitting on the grass, out in the countryside, with Jesus 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, if that's possible. And then just think, What is he talking about? What is this message that we're hearing? Now, I'm not going to go over this in detail, but clearly the central message here is the shepherd and the sheep. And we hear that he is the shepherd and his people are the sheep. And that there's a special relationship between the shepherd and the sheep. I think even farmers in Britain at times do develop special relationships with their sheep. But even more so back in the Middle East. They didn't use sheepdogs to round up the sheep. They developed a relationship with the sheep in order to round the sheep up. The sheep would recognize the shepherd's voice and follow him. Often there was a bellwether sheep or ram who would particularly move off first after the shepherd. But there was a very special relationship between the shepherd and the sheep trusted the shepherd. The sheep knew his voice, and his voice they would follow, and no other. Notice the other thing that was brought in was the fact that there were thieves and robbers. Well, you can also imagine how acutely aware the people of that time were of thieves and robbers. Living in the West, living in Britain, we're so used to a good police force and an orderly society that we, thank God, don't too often find ourselves in a situation where we feel like there's thieves and robbers right on the right of us and on the left of us. But there are plenty of countries where you walk around and you do have to keep an eye out all the time, not knowing where a thief or a robber might come from. So they would have connected with this straight away. They would have seen, well, I could do with a shepherd in my life. And that's the message now too for us here. It's one of, look, you need a shepherd. Whether you're aware of it or not, if you take a moment to consider it, you'll realise that you want a relationship with a shepherd who is going to be your security, who's going to be your provider, who's going to be your protector.